got all sorts of great topics to cover today, from studio equipment to set changes, to KASA switch discussion, to WLED, to Q&A from the comment section, to disks filling up, to YAML rewrites and automations, all kinds of great stuff. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome to another Friday video here on Fast How To. If you're new to the channel, my name's Jeff, and on this channel, I discuss smart homes, smart home products and tech, and other related nerd topics. Here on the fRYEday podcast series, I cover rye whiskey, and the videos are more of an informal discussion style, where I go over things I've been working on, things that are coming up, problems I'm having in my smart house, or with Home Assistant, some Q&A from viewers, and other related topics along those lines. If that sounds like something you're interested in, or if you just like to hang out with me, go and find that subscribe button down there and give it a slap. Appreciate it. As always, we're going to start this episode with the rye. If you're just here for the nerd bits, I've included chapters, so please feel free, skip ahead. There is a lot of great nerd content on this one. The distillery of this fine rye needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. George Garvin Brown was born September 2nd, 1846 in Munfordville, Kentucky. In 1863, he moved to Louisville to attend high school, and following that, he became a pharmaceutical salesman. In 1870, he created his first whiskey, naming it after a doctor. To guarantee consistency, bourbon was sourced from 3 nearby distilleries: Mattingly, Melwood, and Atherton. Brown sealed his whiskey exclusively in glass bottles and signed each bottle as his personal guarantee of quality, a signature that can still be found on bottle seals to this day. His first bourbon was presented to the world at 90 proof. In 1897, Brown decided to release a bottled in bond version, and thus the proof was increased from 90 to the required 100. However, the 1897 Bottled in Bond Act additionally required that bourbon come from 1 distillery and 1 distilling season, so in 1901, Brown purchased the Mattingly Distillery. In 1910, a fire on the bottling line would shut down production. The whiskey had already been dumped and was awaiting bottling, but with the line shut down, it was put into a second barrel for storage while the line was undergoing repairs, thus creating the very first double-barreled bourbon sold as very old fine whiskey. In 1920, the distillery was granted a permit to sell and manufacture whiskey during Prohibition. It is this permit that today provides the distillery with the distinction of being the only bourbon continually sold by the same company before, during, and after Prohibition. 2 weeks after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the distillery would deliver their first high-proof industrial alcohol to help, making it the first distillery to convert their entire production to industrial-grade alcohol to aid in the war effort. In 1962, President's Choice was introduced and offered as a single-barrel product if the whole barrel was purchased. In 2002, on what would have been Brown's 156th birthday, the world was introduced to the first vintage-dated bourbon in the industry. In 2014, the Whiskey Row series was launched, offering consumers a way to taste their way through history. 4 expressions complete the series, each representing a moment in the brand's story. If you've not yet figured out who the brand is, this will probably give it away. The 4 expressions are 1870 Original Batch, 1897 Bottled in Bond, 1910 Old Fine Whiskey, and 1920 Prohibition-style whiskey. In 2018, the distillery returned home to Whiskey Row and opened at 119 West Main Street, the same building that the brand called home from 1882 to 1919. In addition, they are the only downtown distillery with an active cooperage, making and charring barrels in the same facility where whiskey is aging. In 2019, after a 40-plus year absence, the brand reintroduced the historic rye grain recipe they acquired as part of their 1940 purchase of Old Kentucky Distillery, featuring proprietary yeast and a mash bill of 65% rye, 20% malted barley, and 20% corn. The product was shared with the world at 100 proof. On June 1st, 2021, the single barrel strength version of that same rye was released, which is what I'm enjoying right here. While being released in limited quantities, it is not so limited as to be one of the unobtainium products, and at a shelf price of under $100, it's quite approachable as well. So, who was the doctor? Having served as a surgeon in the Civil War, he returned to his native Louisville, Kentucky, where he was George Brown's neighbor. Being a physician, Brown called upon him frequently as a pharmaceutical salesman from 1867 to 1870, and he became a very consistent buyer of Brown's whiskey. His name was Dr. William Forrester with 2 R's, and the distillery, of course, is none other than Old Forester with 1 R. The name was changed to drop the 2nd R in 1874 for marketing purposes. Pulled from the 7th floor of Warehouse H and bottled at 128.5 proof and sealed with the signature of George Brown all these years later, this rye is sure to please even the most discerning critic among you. All right, I hope you enjoyed today's rye history lesson, but it's time to get to the nerd bits now. So what have I been up to? I think I may have mentioned this previously, but I did actually manage to switch back to DeepStack. I updated Blue Iris to the latest version, which said it included AI enhancements, so I decided to try removing Code Project and reinstalling DeepStack, and it worked again. Woohoo! Best AI enhancement ever! Screw Code Project! Let's see. In an effort to make better and better content, I'm continually adding new bits of gear. The latest acquisition is this, actually, 100 millimeter Canon macro lens for product shots, actually. So I should be getting a lot better B-roll to improve the quality of these. I'd like to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel. You guys help make this stuff possible. All the money from that goes right back into the channel, either into production equipment like that or directly into smart home equipment that I make videos about. If you'd like to help support the channel by becoming a patron, you can scan the QR code that I put somewhere in post to check it out, or there's a link in the description. Along those same lines, my wife got me a SERP Magic Carpet Pro slider for Christmas. This thing is super cool. I need quite a bit more practice with it, but I've already gotten some pretty decent footage with it. And in fact, the footage of the bottle that you just saw was captured using it. Of course, this meant I needed a couple more tripods to support it and 3 more fluid heads, 2 for on top of the tripods to hold the slider, and then 1 on top of the slider to hold the camera and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, speaking of equipment, are you guys interested in seeing a studio tour? I'd be happy to do one. I mean, I know I like seeing those, but I don't know if that's something that you guys would be interested in watching. So let me know in the comments. Oh yeah, I tried my hand at soldering. For those of you that haven't been keeping up, I bought a pine saw and tried to set that. I'm not good at that. But the pine saw, that was pretty good. Got my desks automated though. They automatically go up and down now. Made a video about that. If you haven't seen it, check it out. The 100 millimeter lens, actually put in a bit of work on that one. See if you can pick out what shots it was. But I recently made a few changes to my home office here, or my set. Thinking about making some more. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts, what you think about the change in the colors on the background and that kind of thing. Been watching a lot more editing videos, learning more tricks and techniques for how to make higher quality videos for you guys. Trying to work more on my audio too. Sounds pretty decent, but it's still not quite where I want it to be. I think I might need to get some professional assistance there. So there's really a lot that goes into making these videos. So I really appreciate you guys lending me your ears and eyeballs for a few minutes every week or two. I've also been working a lot on maintenance and cleanup of my home assistant setup. It's been a while since I really went through and organized stuff, cleaned up old code, and generally made things more efficient. A big part of that was updating the YAML syntax in my configuration and automations files from the 2024.10 release. If you've not yet done that, I'll leave a link in the description to the documentation where they talk about this. No, it's not necessary since they don't plan to deprecate the old syntax, but studio code gets all manner of pissed off and you get red warnings, and my OCD got the better of me and made me fix it. That's what happened. So for those of you that saw the automations episode, I did go through and update all of my security camera notifications and automation, that whole big mess, with trigger IDs and a choose block, which we're actually going to get into here in a little bit. It is a lot more efficient, but hold that thought. I recently started messing with bubble cards too, which you'll see as part of the same, but they're really cool, and I'll make a much longer video about that once I finish my dashboard and get it all rearranged the way that I want it to be. It still needs a lot of updates, but I've made a bunch of other changes, and it's really quite a bit different than it was when I made the Dashboard December series last year. I had actually planned to make another Dashboard December video for 2024, but between the two lengthy videos that I already made in December and the holidays and just life got in the way, I also didn't have time to make all of the changes that I wanted to, and I don't want to show you guys a video of my half-baked nonsense, so the dashboard video is going to have to wait a bit for the full dashboard video. A couple of weeks ago, I finally got around to setting up a couple of the Amcrest indoor Wi-Fi pan tilt cameras. Wow, are these things so much nicer than the Ubiquiti G3 and G4 Instant cameras that I was using before. I don't know if it's better quality Wi-Fi radios or just better antennas or what, but the Amcrest ones actually stay connected to the network, just like the Amcrest doorbells that I'm using. Look for a video about the doorbells and the cameras coming up in the not too distant future. There's a few things I need to get working with the doorbells first. I mean, they work. You push the button and it rings, and I get a pic on my phone of who's at the door. But I've seen a way that you can actually get two-way audio working through them through Home Assistant. So I want to try and get that all sorted out to try and include it in my video. That was a big part of why I switched to these, along with the fact that the Ubiquiti ones just kept falling off the network. But I never could figure out how to get two-way audio working via Home Assistant with the Ubiquiti doorbells, and I couldn't find anybody else that had either. Now, not to get all mushy in here with the holidays and all, but I really want to take a moment and sincerely thank each and every one of you. This channel has seen tremendous growth over the past few months, so thank you all so much for watching, and of course, for all the likes and comments as well. I've got a quick Q&A from the comments section on my automations video that I'd actually like to touch on. Steve Jones 172 Pilot says, I'm fairly new to HA, but this was kind of basic. I would really love to see some more of your complex ones, even the camera one again, as it looks in YAML. I won't call myself a developer, but I've done my fair share of programming and scripting over the years, and I seem to just have a mental block on the whole YAML thing. Rest assured, Steve, I'm going to be doing an entire video all about YAML at some point here. It's on my very long list of topics to cover. But in the meantime, let's go through the security camera one again. Now, I have made a lot of changes to that automation since the last time I showed it. I know. It was only like a few weeks ago, right? But I'm constantly working on something. Anyway, it is indeed much faster now. And of course, that makes me much happier. I'll go through it all in the UI first so everybody understands what it's doing, and then I'll pull up the YAML and we can go through that side by side. Hopefully, it'll make more sense that way. Before I do that, however, I want to make note of another comment that I got. It's related, just bear with me. Back in the beginning of November of 2024, I put up a poll titled, What topic would you most like to see a video about? Susie the Witch left the following comment on that poll. I voted, but what I really want to see is how and why to use response variables in the UI when creating automations. Today is your lucky day, Susie, so I really hope that you see this video. For anyone that hasn't seen the automation video and is interested what the previous iteration of this automation looked like, I'll throw a link to that video in the description if you want to check it out. Here we go. Okay, so rather than go through every single one of these things, because these 7 up here are all the same, it just depends on what camera triggered it, right? So we'll just start with Backyard North. This will be our 1. So here you can see I used a trigger ID of BYN, and the entity is the motion sensor for my Backyard North camera. And when that changes to detected, that's our trigger. So then our actions, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to test to see if both of these conditions are true. And that is if the illuminance is below 100. And so this is the brightness from my Tempest weather meter. So if it's dark-ish out, right? 100 is actually not as dark as you'd think. But anyway, and then check and confirm that the motion sensor control is on. I've got a button on my dashboard that I use to override that if I'm sitting out back on the patio or the deck so that, the lights don't turn on and blind me, right? So if those 2 conditions are true, both of them, then I'm going to start a timer on the exterior motion timer, and I'm going to turn on a Boolean for exterior motion sensor. Pretty standard. After that, here's my choose block now. So I'm going to choose between 7 different actions. So we'll just, again, they're all the same. So we're just going to go with option 1 here. This is triggered by BYN. So when triggered by BYN is the condition for the system to choose this code to run. Then our actions are going to be run this shell command called rotate alert and pass in this data, which is file name BK yard north alert. And then response variable is going to be BKN underscore response. So what this response variable, what this says to do is take the response that Home Assistant gets from running that script and then store that response in this variable. And I'm going to access that again in just a minute. So then we're going to delay for 2 seconds to give that time for all that stuff to happen. And then this is where we're going to check that response. So our template is BKN underscore response, right? Which was our response variable that we defined up here. So BKN response return code equals 0. So if that's true, then do nothing, because 0 means there was no error, so it was successful. Otherwise, notify me, right? Send a notification to my mobile phone, and the title is issue with Backyard North rotation. And for the message, it's just going to send return code with a colon and then whatever the return code was. And then it's going to send stderr with a colon, and then it'll send the text from whatever the error was. And that'll be sent to my phone as a notification, a Home Assistant notification via the companion app. So that's great. So once we've done that, then we're going to take a snapshot of the Backyard North Alert camera, and we're going to save that here in config www, and the file name will be bkyardnorthalert.jpg. Wait, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? What's that from? BK Yard North Alert, our file name. Remember that. Okay. So then next up, we'll delay for 2 seconds again to make sure that that snapshot completed successfully. And then we are going to test if either of these 2 sets of conditions are true. And the first is if it's dark and the motion sensor control is on, or if nobody's home and there's no guests present. Pretty standard. So if that evaluates to true, then we're going to send a mobile notification to my phone and to my wife's phone. No changes have been made there. Don't really need to dig into it. It is what it is. All right, so if we go back up then to this shell command rotate alert, let's start with what's a shell command. So I covered those in some of my previous videos, but that was quite a while ago, so recent subscribers may not have seen them. Let's review. Shell commands allow you to run bash scripts, and they're defined in configuration.yaml. Here's the one in question. This says to execute it using bin bash, and that it's located in config scripts, and it's called rotateimage.sh, and we want to call a function rotateimage or rotateimg, and we're going to pass it a variable called filename. So here's the rotateimage.sh script, and here is the rotateimg function. So go ahead and pause the video here to read the code and leave me a comment below telling me what it is that you think this script does, and then continue watching to see if you're right. While you're doing some of that, I'm going to enjoy some of this fantastic rye. Okay, did you figure it out? Time to see if you were right. Since this is just a casual drinking discussion, I don't want to get too into the weeds about how to write bash scripts. The internet is full of great instructional content written by people much better at it than I am. But in a nutshell, what this script does is it checks to see if a file exists, and then if it does, it copies it. So if we go back to the automation that called this, you can see that the file name value we passed is BK Yard North Alert. So starting from the top, we're looking for BK Yard North Alert 4.jpg. And if that exists, then we're going to copy that to BK Yard North Alert 5.jpg. Then we're going to check and see if 3 exists. And if it does, we're going to copy it to 4. Then we're going to check to see if 2 exists. If it does, we'll copy it to 3. And then if BK Yard North Alert.jpg exists, we will copy that to 2. Now you're wondering why the hell I'm doing that, right? Well, let me show you why. Here's why. Instead of only showing whatever the current alert image is on the dashboard, now I can show the last 5. My dashboard's not cluttered up. I hid them behind bubble cards, so it pops up. And if I want to see it bigger, I can just click on it and then zoom in, and there we go. Perfect. Very easy. The ability to zoom in is super helpful for fine-tuning the triggers on my camera. I saved this pic as an example. As you can see, my security system was 86% confident that this was a person. Really, it's just a snowflake in just the right place that looks like a blurry torso, and the legs sticking out from beneath it are driveway markers at the end of my driveway. You can see them on the other side of the driveway as well, just in front of my truck. These let us know not to drive into the ditch when it's filled with snow. But anyway, I compared that to other images of actual people that it identified, and then looked at the confidence level for the correct identifications and bumped up the minimum confidence level on that camera to prevent the lights from turning on in the middle of the night. My neighbors better send me a thank you card. The same thing was going on with my backyard south camera. If I zoom in here to one of these, you can see the last 2 alerts look the same or very similar, but you can see it's actually identifying this tree as a person. When a car drives down the side road and the headlights come out just right, that tree gets incorrectly identified. So I bumped up the minimum confidence on that camera, and now you can see that there haven't been any more of those notifications. That was December 26th, and the only thing it's correctly notified now is people. So good deal. Okay, so now that I've covered that automation in detail, let's take a look at the code side by side with that so that we can see what that's doing. So I actually pulled the YAML out of my automations file just to make it easier so that we don't have to scroll through the whole thing. And I can correctly and more easily identify line numbers for you guys, like 14 instead of 2,687. So first over here, we've got the ID for the automation. And then we've got the alias, which is security, person detected on exterior camera. You'll see that matches up over here, right? And then there's no description on this. So next then we've got the triggers. So if I expand this first one, so the trigger is state change. And that's what the little triangles represent here, right? Is change of state. And the entity ID for this is the backyard north view motion, which is what you see here. And then the trigger is when that turns to on in the UI that shows as detected. And then the ID for this trigger is BYN, which you can see right here. So then from line 10 down to line 40 are just the remainder of the triggers being defined. So there's one for the backyard south view, one for deck, one for driveway, one for front door, one for front yard, and one for garage door, right? Okay, easy. Then you can see that conditions is blank, and same over here, right? That's and if, the condition section. So no conditions. So now under the actions section, the first thing we're doing, right? Conditionally execute an action. So that's an if. So you can see that here's the if. We'll expand the if. And the first thing we're going to, or the first condition that we're going to have to add here is this and, right? So that's condition and. And then the conditions nested within that and are numeric state, which is what this 1, 2, 3 denotes, is numeric state. And the entity ID for that is sensor.st blah, 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 illuminance, which is, again, my tempest. And you'll see that here. And then the number that we're going to use is 100, right? So below 100. And then the next condition is state. So again, that's the triangle. And so that is when the input Boolean exterior motion sensor control is on. And you see that here. Okay, so we're through the if, then, which matches up with what you see here in the UI. Our first action is going to be to start a timer. So action is timer.start. And then the target is just the entity ID for the timer, which is exterior motion timer, right? Timer.exterior motion timer. And the duration is 1 hour, which is set here in this box. Then we've got another action, which is input Boolean turn on. And you see that here, right? Perform action, input Boolean turn on. Pretty straightforward. So then we just need to define the entity ID for that. And that's input Boolean.exterior motion sensor. And then there is no data being passed there, so data is blank. Next, we've got our choose block. So we start that with choose, and then we have to define the conditions for each of these options, right? So here's conditions, and then condition trigger. So in YAML, you don't define like condition 1, option 2, right? You just say condition, and every time it runs into conditions, then it just adds another option. So if we were to scroll through this at the conditions, that was 2. So here's 3. 4, and so on. We'll go back up to the one that we're working on here, though. All right. So our trigger, right? Our condition for this is trigger, and the ID is BYN. You can see here, right? So that all matches up there. Then the actions that we want to perform, right? So that's called the sequence, starts with. And then the first action that we want to take in the sequence is shell command .rotate alert. And you can see that here. And so when I expand that, we see there's our action. And then action data, right, is file name, BK yard north alert, which you see here. And then you see response variable colon BKN underscore response, which is what you've got here. So then the next thing in the sequence is a delay for 2 seconds, right? 0 hours, 0 minutes, 2 seconds, 0 milliseconds. Then the next thing in the sequence is this if. So here's the if, and the condition is a template. So if we expand that, there's value template. And so here you see the exact value template that's in here. Then is blank, right? There's nothing that we're going to do if then, right? If it's 0, do nothing. I only want to know when it's not 0. I want to know when there's an error. So else action is notify my phone, right? And so I'll expand that. No metadata, right? Same as what you see here. This is what you're looking at here is just the YAML basically. So no metadata. The action notify Jeff's S22, right? That's here. And then data right here. And then title issue with backyard north rotation. You can see that right here. And message is return code. This one got cut a little, sorry about that. But return code, right? Basically the same thing that you see right here. So then our next action is perform action, camera take snapshot. And so that's right here, action camera.snapshot. The data for that is the file name that we want to store that in, which is down here. And then the target, that's this section here. And you provide the entity ID for the camera, which is camera.bkyard, right? Easy. Then we will delay for another 2 seconds. And then finally, we've got another if, right? Conditionally execute. So if, and then we're going to test if either of these, right? So this is or, and this of course is and. We're going to test if one or the other of these two sets of conditions are true. So we'll start with the first one here. And so in the YAML now, this is where paying attention to your indentation will really help you. And this in particular is why I really like Studio Code Server. I covered that in a previous video about how to install that and set that up. But I really, really like Studio Code Server because as you can see, it color codes the different indentations, right? So we've got this kind of, I don't know, goldish color and then sort of green and then a little red or pink kind of, then blue, and then they kind of start to repeat. But so if, and then our first condition is or, right? So that's up here. Then our conditions, our first condition under that is and, so that's this here. And then conditions. And then our first condition under that, finally, we're going to evaluate something, right? So the numeric state of the illuminance sensor again, right? The 1, 2, 3, that's numeric state. And entity and below 100, you guys have already seen that. And then the same, right? Confirm that the motion sensor control is on. That's right here. Then, or if all three of these are true, right? So that was here, right? So condition and that's these sets of conditions, right? And we go back up to the or then. So then this indentation here is the conditions 4 that are evaluated by this OR, right? So there's the first and then these are the conditions that constitute that and then this is the second and right there. And then these conditions here from 110 through 127, these are the conditions that make up this second and that's nested underneath the OR. All right, so the first is state, of course, right? These are all state. You can see the triangle there. But so state is if I am not home for 30 seconds, or if my wife's phone is not connected to Wi-Fi for 30 seconds, or if guest present is off, right? Those 3 things all need to be true. So I'm not home for 30 seconds. My wife's not home for 30 seconds minimum, and there's no guests present. Guest present is just a sensor that I created that tells me it just uses if anybody's connected to my guest Wi-Fi. I did cover that in a previous video. I don't remember which one, but if you guys want to see that covered again, let me know. I'll go over it. Okay, so we're through the if portion of all this, right? So now we're down to then. So we're actually going to do things here, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is send a notification to my phone. And the message for that is someone's in the backyard. And the title is person in backyard. And then data is, the icon will be colored red. And we're going to send a image, right? This JPEG that we took the snapshot above. And then we're going to allow actions here, right? So the action is going to be URI, and that's open camera is going to be the title. So that's going to be a button that appears below the notification on my phone. So I'll see the picture, and then below that picture, there'll be open camera. And so if I tap that, then it's going to take me to this dashboard page in the companion app. Over here, then you can see action is notify the mobile app on my phone. And the message is someone in the backyard. And the title is person in the backyard. And then color red and the image, actions, action URI, title and URI, right? That's all the same as we saw over here. And then the same thing just sends a message to my wife's phone. Then all the rest of this, all 680 lines, right? This is all the same thing over and over and over again, just on a different trigger and a different camera, different file name, different screenshot, same thing over and over and over and over again. And this is why I like YAML, right? If I wanted to add an 8th camera, well, I can come in here and I can click all this crap and type, and I don't have time for that. You have time for that? No. So all I would do in that case is I would come in here and I would say conditions, right? So this is my condition line, right? If we go all the way back up, right, we got to pay attention to our indentation, but pay attention to our indentations. Then here's choose, right? And then conditions. All the conditions, the individual options underneath this, the hyphen that begins those are all on this red section here, right? This red 2-space indentation. So I can scroll all the way down to the end, look for that last one. So here we are on 591 is where option 7 is defined, right? So, yep, this is the garage door trigger, right? So let's say that I add a camera on the roof, for example, which I don't know why I would do, but we'll add a camera on the roof. How about that? So I'm just going to copy all of this, and then, I'm going to paste it right below. So we want to go back to red so I can find the top of this now. should have noted that, oh, well, here we go. It's actually didn't indent right. So we're going to move that over. There. Now we are lined up correctly. And so this one here, beginning 679, is the duplicate garage door alert, right? So we're going to change that because this is on the roof now, right? So now all I have to do is say roof alert, because that's what we're going to call that. And the trigger for this one, we're going to call roof. And then our response variable will be roof response, and so on. We just go right down through and replace roof, or replace the, oh, look at that. Haha, I need to change my notifications. That should say garage door. Look at that, busted on camera. See, I'm not perfect, but so here, roof rotation, roof response, then camera snapshot, and we're going to save that as roof alert. And the camera for that will be roof alert camera. Then next, same thing, right? We're going to check and make sure it's dark out, check and make sure that motion sensor control is enabled, and make sure nobody's home. And then we're going to send me a picture of roofalert.jpg. And then we're going to send my wife a picture of roofalert.jpg. And instead of opening the driveway dashboard page, we will open the roof page. Oh, I suppose we should probably change this too, right? Someone is on the roof. Person on the roof. And there you go. Now we just added option 8. If this were actually production code and I reloaded it, we would have option 8 in here, and it would be for the roof camera. Unfortunately, we didn't add the trigger, but same deal. Scroll all the way back up, and you want to add another trigger. We'll just take this one here, copy, paste, and this will be roof motion, and then the ID will be roof. And we're done. There you go. We would have an 8th trigger, and we would have an 8th option under the choose block. Super easy. All right. Hopefully that helped you guys with YAML and showed you the automation there. I'm going to have to go through and clean up my notifications. Obviously, like I said, I did this a little quick, but yeah, I'll clean those up later. What else have I been up to? I got those black HS200 KASA switches installed up in the kitchen. Those are sharp looking. They look great on the dark backsplash, and my wife really likes having the under cabinet lighting on in the morning when she comes down to get coffee and it's dark out. It's been a couple of years, though, since I bought any KASA switches. And I mentioned in the last one when I showed you the switch that I had some concerns, right? Well, it turns out the installation with those has changed a bit. I mean, the physical installation is the same, right? No changes to the wiring or the connections or something. But now to add them to the app, they use Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi. And in order to add them to Home Assistant, you do need to provide your username and password from the app. When I first saw that, I was immediately very concerned that they were going to be cloud connected, but I checked the integration and it still says local. Just to be sure though, I did shut off my internet access and they still worked. So bonus, it appears that KASA just made things a little bit more secure by preventing somebody from randomly accessing them via the IP address or what have you. It's worth noting that you do need to provide your password and username to the integration only one time, and then it remembers it and uses those automatically for all the future switches or devices that you might add. For anybody that's on the fence about the KASA switches, I was working in 3 different boxes, and I had to remove a Shelly relay from 2 of those 3 boxes, including gathering up all the tools, shutting off all the necessary breakers, removing the faceplates, removing the old switches, removing the 2 Shellys, installing 4 KASA switches, reinstalling the faceplates, turning the power back on, adding the switches to the network, cleaning up, and then adding them all back to Home Assistant. All that nonsense took me about 2 hours, start to finish, and they were just as great as all the rest of the KASA devices that I have. No, I'm not sponsored by KASA, though I'm really starting to think I should be. Anyway, in case you're wondering, I'm going to add those Shelly relays to the giveaway pile for my patrons, along with that pile of Ubiquiti cameras and my old Ubiquiti doorbells too. So if you'd like in on that, you know where to find my Patreon page. Let's see, what else is going on? I'm looking to install some LED toe kick lighting in the kitchen. I want to use this for alert lighting. Usually when we're in the kitchen, there's music playing from the whole home audio system, or the exhaust fan is going while we're cooking, or both. Needless to say, it's usually pretty loud in the kitchen, so I want to install some lighting that will get our attention if there's something going on that we need to know about, like somebody ringing a doorbell, for example. For this, I'm thinking I'm going to use WLED and some light strips, but I really don't know a whole lot about WLED yet. I don't have it, but it's on my list of things that I've been researching. Not only WLED, but also what strips I should get. I'm not allergic to spending money, but I am allergic to wasting it. So I'm looking for some high quality light strips at a reasonable price. If you know of some, tell me in the comments and I'll go and check them out. I will definitely come back and keep you guys posted on what I come up with, but I'm sure that whole thing will turn into an episode all by itself. Oh, here's a fun one. Today, my Home Assistant disk space filled completely. I got an error. It happened that I noticed it just before the system crashed. I honestly don't know how it didn't crash. Everything else I've ever worked on crashes when it runs out of disk space. But anyway, it ended up filling because of the log files. Now, I don't know exactly which log file, nor do I know what the exact culprit was that caused the logs to fill. The logs are always so noisy that I usually don't spend much time in them. However, this prompted me to dig into it just a bit, and I found that you can configure the logging level for various things. I'll leave a link to the full doc in the description, but that is definitely something that you should check out and configure appropriately for your system. I got rid of all the informational messages. That'll help to reduce the noise level. Also, if you run into this though, just reboot HA. The logs are automatically cleared upon reboot. Now, if you're trying to figure out what it was that filled your system, I'll show you how I did that. Here we go. So if you don't have the terminal add-on, you need to get that for starters. You're going to want that. Just du-shc root asterisk and then sort-h produced this output here, which told me that Home Assistant was consuming, the Home Assistant directory was consuming almost 220 gig, which is by far the largest, right? So then I wanted to make sure that the database was good. So du-h on the database, and that was only 1 gig. Okay, yeah, that's not it. So, all right, we'll change to the Home Assistant directory and list what's in there. And then we'll do a du-shc whack Home Assistant whack asterisk, pipe that, sort H again. And what do you know? The largest thing in there was logs. Right here. log. Reboot Home Assistant and all better. I have since then configured the system monitor integration, and I will be writing an automation to send me a message when disk space reaches 50%, which should be plenty of warning since my system normally, believe it or not, only sits at 6%. If you're interested in that integration, system monitor. So there's 70 entities that are included with this thing, but I only use the one. I just enabled that one. And so right now it says I have 210 gig of free space. So the drive is 220 gig. It's supposed to be 256, but 220, whatever. So when it reaches 120, then I'll fire off a message to my mobile app, my companion app, and then I'll know to come down here and look at it. But anyway. Oh, I can't believe that I almost forgot to mention this one. Look at what showed up a couple of days ago. A 55-inch touchscreen. This thing is going to be the biggest Home Assistant dashboard that you've ever seen. I've got some work to do to design a dashboard that will be displayed on this, not to mention that I've got to get it out of the box and assemble the stand and make a video for the sponsor that sent it to me, but I am super excited to get that dashboard designed and start using this thing. It's going to be awesome. Be sure to watch for that video in the near future. One final thing. You guys decided that I should give away that bond bridge instead of smashing it. Well, Josh Mellett, 1986, congratulations. You are the unlucky winner. Send me an email with your shipping info and I'll get it out to you. Well, no more rye. You know what that means. That's going to wrap it up for this week. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the update, and I hope you enjoyed this week's t-shirt. Until next time, go automate something, will ya?